It's happening. Fauci is absolutely falling apart. We're going to take a look at the reports coming out of his disastrous 7-hour deposition. We're going to see how he took flailing to a whole new level. And make sure to stick with me to the very end of this video when we'll find out the most shocking revelation of them all. You're not going to want to miss this. As many of you know, Dr. Anthony Fauci was interviewed under oath for a reported 7 hours last week as part of numerous lawsuits against the Biden administration filed by Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmidt. At the heart of the filings are allegations that White House officials and federal agencies colluded with big tech to deliberately suppress and censor viewpoints that demurred from the official narrative surrounding the entire COVID saga. And so last week, Schmidt hauled in none other than Tony Fauci himself into a deposition in Washington, D.C. While we don't have the official transcript as of yet, a number of reports are describing what was seen. One of the more humorous and trolling aspects of the 7-hour deposition, apparently Louisiana Attorney General Jeff Landry, who's part of the lawsuit with the Missouri Attorney General, he displayed a book on his desk to deliberately rattle Fauci. It was Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s excoriating the real Anthony Fauci, which is just utterly brilliant. Regardless, according to Miranda Devine of the New York Post, throughout the 7-hour deposition, Fauci's demeanor was cocky and deceitful. There was no humility or admission of fallibility, no reflection that the lockdowns may have done more harm than good, especially to children's schooling, or that vaccine mandates were pointlessly divisive. Instead, what's being widely reported is that Fauci suffered throughout the 7 hours from a sudden lack of recall. That's exactly what Jeff Landry, the Louisiana Attorney General, tweeted out. Quote, "Wow, it was amazing to spend 7 hours with Dr. Fauci, the man who single-handedly wrecked the U.S. economy based upon, quote, the science, only to discover that he can't recall practically anything dealing with his COVID response." And that amnesia-inspired evasion and deflection apparently characterized the whole of the deposition. Fauci reportedly denied knowing anything about the proxy funding of dangerous gain-of-function research on viruses by the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, even though we have the emails that indicate otherwise. Back in June of last year, thousands of private emails from Fauci were released to the Washington Post, to CNN, to BuzzFeed News, through the Freedom of Information Act. These were emails dating from January to June of the year 2020, when COVID first reached our shores and developed into a full-blown pandemic. And the emails were in many respects absolutely startling. They were startling in terms of what they revealed about the radical discrepancy between what Fauci actually knew about the lab leak theory from the very beginning and what he publicly stated he knew, which is obviously a huge problem for Fauci, given that such public statements are under oath. But we now know that as early as January 31st, 2020, Fauci had received an email from the head of the nation's largest biomedical research facility warning Fauci that COVID was very possibly engineered coming from a lab rather than from a so-called wet market. So the whole question of COVID's lab origin was front and center with Fauci and the NIH from the very beginning of all this. But of course, given that the NIH funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan, there appears to have been very deliberate efforts to downplay that origins theory so as to cover up that funding. But there's an even bigger revelation coming out of this deposition that's going to absolutely shock you. But first, gang, as you can see, the world is going insane. We've got a president who's shaking hands with ghost people who aren't even there on the stage with them, and a deep state that's more desperate than ever. Patriots over the centuries have always relied on the timeless value of gold and silver to protect their assets during economic storms, and that is where the amazing patriots over at Goldco come in. If you have $50,000 or more in an IRA, 401k, or savings account, you need to protect those assets from bumbling Biden's insanity with the timeless value of gold and silver. Click on that link below and talk to our good friends over at Goldco. Gang, they are patriots just like you and me, and they want you to succeed so much, they're offering up to $10,000 in free silver if you you open up an account with them. That's right, $10K. But this is a limited time offer. Do not wait. Click on that link below or visit my special website, turleytalkslikesgold.com. I don't know how many of you are familiar with what's called the Great Barrington Declaration. It was penned by eminent medical experts from the most prestigious universities in both the United States and the UK, such as Stanford and Harvard over here on this side of the pond. It was published in October of 2020, and it argued for a less extreme, more scientifically orthodox way of dealing with the virus. And the basic gist was to provide maximum protection for at-risk populations such as the old or those with pre-existing conditions, while at the same time allowing the rest of the population, particularly school-age children, right, younger populations, to just live out their lives normally. Fauci, during this deposition, was directly confronted with the question as to why he rejected the Great Barrington Declaration. In fact, we have emails between Fauci and Francis Collins, the director of NIH, that explicitly stated they wanted to deliberately discredit the Great Barrington authors. Here's what was one of Francis Collins' emails to Fauci. Quote, "The proposal from the three fringe epidemiologists seems to be getting a lot of attention, and even a co-signature from Nobel Prize winner Mike Levitt at Stanford. There needs to be a quick and devastating takedown of its premises, but I don't see anything like that online yet. Is it underway?" And that is ultimately what these lawsuits are about, this clear collusion between big government, big tech, and pushing a single authorized narrative while at the same time suppressing any alternative or dissent to that narrative. Fauci was pushed on this, and apparently he responded by fully defending the Chinese lockdown strategy. According to a report by the Epoch Times, Fauci claimed that the inspiration for our lockdown here came from none other than communist China. And that seems to have been what he said on CNN of late. Take a look.
China's official news agency today published an op-ed asserting that the country's strict COVID measures are scientific and effective. Are they?
Well, when you want to shut down in order to interrupt immediately a process that's going on like the spread of infection, there should be a purpose to it. Like you want to make sure you get enough ventilators or enough PPE, or you want to get your population vaccinated. The comment that I made about their severe actions that they've taken is that you have to have an end game. What's the purpose? If the purpose is let's get all the people vaccinated, particularly the elderly, then okay, for a temporary period of time to do that. But they have very, very strict type of a lockdown. They're locking people in their homes, which is really, they can't even go out and, from what I hear, shop or walk a dog or something like that. That's going to create a lot of pushback on the part of the population if there's no underlying purpose of what you want to do.
Well, you heard it yourself. As long as there's a purpose to it, as long as you have a very clear goal, like, getting everyone vaccinated, well, then have at it. Have at it, man. China's problem isn't the draconian lockdowns per se. It's that those lockdowns don't have a goal or end game in sight. That's what makes them so draconian. That's the guy who, at least in part, was responsible for what we have experienced over the last 2 years and the disastrous effects that will last for years to come. Whether or not justice will ever come for this guy personally, the best justice of all is to collectively make sure that we together build a parallel economy so strong and free that such insanity never happens again. As always, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. You'll definitely want to check out my latest video on Elon Musk dropping an absolute bombshell as the EU threatens to ban Twitter. You're not going to want to miss it, so make sure to click on that link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.